Good morning and welcome. I'm Steve Sarakaku. This morning our worship leader is Reverend Susan Francis, and our other worship associates are Martha Holman and Michelle Novak. Whether the Unitarian Church of Evanston is your spiritual home or you are seeking comfort and connection in uncertain times, we are grateful that you are here. We are an inclusive and welcoming community seeking truth and love and striving to nurture the human spirit for a world made whole. We are guided by our principles and values, which remind us in every moment and through every challenge that each of us is worthy of love and that we are all connected through the vast and beautiful web of existence. Together, let us remember our kinship with one another, and may we hold one another in heart and mind with tenderness and careful attention. If you are participating from home, there are many links of connection in the description below of the YouTube live stream, including the order of service credits, ways to support our mission, and how to be added to our email newsletter list. A few announcements. Our youth-led Earth Day event was Friday. If you were not able to join us, please check out the recording on our YouTube channel. It was great. The link is in the newsletter. This coming Thursday, April 28th, is the YWCA's annual Stand Against Racism in Evanston. Bring your signs and join Reverend Eileen and Reverend Susan outside by our Black Lives Matter sign from 10:30 a.m. to 11. After worship today, we will have a 20-minute kinship time from 11:15 to 11:35. Please greet one another and say hello to those who you haven't met before. Check out the program tables in the cafe area. After our kinship time at 11:35, our all ages faith formation hour is being hosted by the Green Team. There will be a rain garden scavenger hunt in the South Lawn, jewelry making from reused bicycle parts in the sanctuary, and the assembling of 50 sack lunches to be delivered to Connections for the Homeless in the back by the kitchen. The nursery for infants through 3 years old will be available in room 11. Please stay and join us. As we begin our worship service, those joining us online are invited to gather your family and your chalice as we join in beloved community.
The Unitarian Church of Evanston resides on the traditional homelands of the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. This land was recorded as being transferred from the local Potawatomi community to the U.S. government in 1829 and then was sold to white settlers. After decades of violent encroachment by the French, British, and then U.S. American settlers, the Potawatomi community had no choice but to sell before they were forcefully removed west of the Mississippi River. The Chicagoland area is now home to one of the largest and most diverse urban Native communities in the U.S. Our faith calls us to name these realities with honor and respect as one small effort toward finding greater accountability, deeper relationship, and mutuality with contemporary Indigenous communities. For the land which we use as sacred space, for the animals and plants that have been sustained by this land, and for our ancestors and descendants who are and will become part of the earth.
As Michelle and Steve, on behalf of the Social Justice Council, light our chalice, symbol of our living tradition, please join in reading an adapted version of Toward a Place of Wholeness by Reverend Viola Abbott. We are Unitarian Universalists. When we lift up our principles, some of us think of them as a form of theology, but they are more important to our collective than that. They do not tell us what we should believe, they tell us how we should be. We are here today because we are mindful of the past and because we have hope for the future. We want the practice of this faith to be a fulfilling manifestation of its promise. Open your hearts. Seek new ways of understanding. Come, let us worship together. Please rise in body or spirit and join in saying the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help another. Before our hymn, please turn to one another, someone sitting near you and perhaps someone you don't know well, and offer a greeting and welcome. If you are participating from home, please offer your greetings in the chat if you haven't already.
Around for our opening hymn. Are you ready? So we're going to sing number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. And Kylie is going to sing it through once, and you're all welcome to join. And then we're going to split it down the middle, and you're going to be the first section, and you're going to be the second section, and you're going to follow Kylie's lead during the round. We're just going to do it 2 times, and you're going to follow my lead. All right.
Come,
Well done. Our story this morning is an adapted version of The Peace Book by Todd Parr.
Peace is making new friends.
Peace is keeping the water blue for all the fish.
Peace is listening to different kinds of music.
Peace is saying you're sorry when you hurt someone.
Peace is helping your neighbor.
Peace is reading all different kinds of books.
Peace is thinking about someone you love.
Peace is giving shoes to someone who needs them.
Peace is planting a tree.
Peace is watching it snow.
Peace is keeping the streets clean.
Peace is offering a hug to a friend.
Peace is everyone having a home.
Peace is growing a garden.
Peace is taking a nap.
Peace is learning another language.
Peace is being free.
Peace is traveling to different places.
Peace is wishing on a star.
Peace
is
being
who you are.
Who you are.
Please join in our responsive song. Number 155, Circle Round for Freedom. We'll just sing it through once.
Hi, my name is Steve Sarakaku. I've been a member of UCE for 24 years. I was an educator with the Chicago Public Schools for nearly 34 years. I saw how unjust our society is to certain people during that time. I have spent the years since my retirement fighting against injustices in healthcare, housing, and the criminal legal system, as well as against racism. The work of our Social Justice Council and the congregation's effort to dismantle racism and other oppressions gives me hope for the future. I feel that there is momentum toward correcting the attitudes and actions that have prolonged the suffering of many of the people I served. Racism, homophobia, transphobia, and ableism are no longer invisible to many people. As people learn more about our true history, they stop blaming people for their own oppression. I witnessed the effects of racism and white supremacy culture virtually all my life. As an American of Japanese ancestry, born 6 years after the end of World War II, I have felt the sting of racism on a small scale. My parents and their friends felt it more. As someone who grew up in the uptown neighborhood of Chicago, I saw how people denigrated others who had low incomes. Those people were white in my neighborhood. As an educator in the Chicago Public Schools, I saw even worse treatment of people with low incomes, most of whom were black and brown. I have seen the suffering that results when people do not have health insurance or incomes that allow them to have housing and or food security. I have seen children afraid to be their true selves in public. Belonging to a faith community that seeks to make the changes necessary to alleviate much of that suffering is truly a gift. The activist organizations with which I have worked over the years have made some great victories. but the wider conflict needs more people power. I see the efforts of this church as contributing to that necessary power. I have been engaged in this work at varying levels for nearly 49 years. I made a tremendous number of mistakes during that time because I did not have the resources that are available these days. I have been forgiven for my mistakes because people saw that my efforts were sincere and I learned from them. I never stopped trying because the suffering has not stopped. I remain hopeful, though, because I am in community with many people working to address the inequalities and oppressions. I ask that you help hold me accountable for doing the work and making amends for the mistakes that I make. If I only knew what I know now when I was 22, or 35, or 48, or 60. Well, you get it. Thanks.
So hi, my name is Michelle Novak. I'd like to be honest about social action as spiritual practice. It's not really as natural a practice or as easy an analogy as I'd like to think it is. It's actually kind of awkward even talking about this now because I see organized religion as ultimately different, yet very much part of my spirituality practice. Sorry. I'm a child of an immigrant Jewish father that escaped Nazi Germany with my grandparents. I knew as truth from a young age that your religion, which is somehow, if you are Jewish, traced into your bloodline, intersecting with where you live, your ability to secure a visa, who or what was leading your country, and the logistics of safe passage could ultimately determine the course of your life. Most of my early social action work was focused on anti-nuclear and peace movements. At 15, my friend invited me to join a small protest of nuclear war in remembrance of the bombings in Hiroshima at Seneca Army Depot in upstate New York. It was about an hour from where we lived in Elmira. The protest was small and solemn, not unlike a prayer service. Maybe that was my first experience with social action as spirituality. Well, this image was taken on that day, if we get the slide. In my young adult life, the AIDS crisis and protesting for pro-choice legislation against the Gulf War, along with practicing a Gen X version of grassroots feminism, were where my social justice actions were mostly focused. In my mid-20s, I married and had 2 daughters. My husband had come here from Mexico, an immigrant like my father, except he arrived 60 years later from a different place and overstayed his visa. Though our marriage allowed him a path to citizenship, it was often turbulent and ended 10 years later. There were many things I learned about the way this country treats their immigrants that is both good and bad. When my sister-in-law was kidnapped and held for ransom by human coyotes in Mexico on her way here to the US to earn money so she and her 7-year-old daughter could have a better life, I felt truly powerless and vowed when I was able to, I would help others. Yes, she made it, but we all, my little family, risked so much I cannot repeat. Things that no young mother and no young family should have to endure to be able to get a better life here in the US. It was not until many years later when I attended, out of sheer despair with a sliver of hope, my first youth service in almost a decade here at UCE, the Sunday after the 2016 presidential election, that deliberate social action as spiritual practice came into focus for me. Mother Jones said famously, "Pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living." I needed a way, a place, a community in which I could be safe enough to both pray and fight. I found that here with people that I share a spiritual and social action practice with at UCE. I'm currently a co-leader on the Immigrant Solidarity team. I also maintain the local NAACP website, design leadership and training courses for the UN, and generally practice social action as a form of spiritual practice, somewhat awkwardly, but always with hope for the future. The next up is our anthem, Where You Go, I Will Go. It is a folk song of radical compassion and love written by Shoshana Jedwab, who is ever listening to and sharing from diverse contemporary cultures and the Jewish spiritual texts and practices that were lived by her ancestors. Our version today is performed by Dr. Glenn Thomas Rideout.
You're divine, my divine. 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 My divine, you're divine, my divine, you're divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go with me. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. I ask my sister, people, my people, you're divine, my divine. You're divine, my divine. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. Your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine, my divine. You're divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go. Children, where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go. Children, where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. Your people are my people. Your people are my people. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. My people. You're divine, my people. Where you go, I will go, sister. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, ancestor. Where you go, I will go. Your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. Your people are my people. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. You're divine, my people. You're divine, my divine. Where you are, my children. You're divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go. My divine, your children, my people. Where you go, my people. Where you go, my people. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. Your people are my people. Your people are my
This is the time in our service every Sunday where we hold space for the joys and sorrows of those gathered here in person and online. We honor the struggles and the triumphs, the brokenness and the wholeness that is woven into the human experience. If you have a joy or sorrow you would like spoken aloud on Sunday morning, you may write it in the Joys and Sorrows book at the back. And Sheila, actually, could I ask you to bring that book up to me? Thank you. Or you may submit it through the Google form on our website or enter it into the chat on the live stream. Thank you. These are the joys and sorrows that have been shared with us for today. From Kristen Lems, congratulations to Erlene Howard, founder and CEO of Collective Resource, on being awarded the first Climate Hero Award from our Green Team. Yeah, I don't know, is Erlene here? In her acceptance remarks, she credited her UU values in her ambitious undertaking. The award was joyfully presented by Michael Drennan. From Vicki Hellier, it is great to be able to have the choir and Gregory making music again during our services. Yay. She sends a thank you to Howard Levy and Yupe for the amazing videos they created for last week's service. And from Greg Grabowski, Sandra Robinson, and Michael Drennan, another joy. You may have noticed that there's some equipment sitting outside the church just north of the lobby. These outdoor units are the new condensing units that will work together with new indoor cooling coils integrated on top of our existing furnaces. With new thermostats, we can cool and dehumidify our sanctuary. Yeah. This project is coming to an end, and we will be able to enjoy a more comfortable indoor environment this summer. From our chat, we have prayers for Philip Arney, who is in the Seattle, Washington hospital, from Amy Stanton. From Ellie Fedderson, she shares that Diane Markle was in the hospital for non-COVID-related lung and heart issues for 3 nights and is better and resting at home now. Diane is hoping the coughing hasn't changed her voice part in the choir, and Ellie is secretly hoping she will be switched from a soprano to a tenor. From Martha Holman. Her sister Beth has had 4 children. Beth's 51-year-old son, Mark Ramos, is now struggling with terminal cancer. Mark will be the 3rd child of Beth's 4 to leave this world. Please hold both Mark and Beth and Martha and their family in your thoughts and prayers. And from emails I have received this week from several people, we hold in our thoughts and prayers First United Church of Christ in Oak Park, and other faith communities who are actively and visibly engaging in decentering whiteness and are defending themselves from the backlash. We hold our queer and trans communities, whose members continue to be bullied in Evanston and Chicago and have their rights and humanity denied across the country. And we hold the Ukrainian refugees and those in Ukraine suffering from human rights violations. This sacred space for our deep offerings is part of the practice of beloved community. Together, we hold each other in tender care. If you have something that is on your heart today, a joy or a sorrow, You're invited now to come forward and light a candle. And we light one more candle, for in the chat there was a note that Jordan Struber is in the hospital again. Please join me in an attitude of prayer and meditation as I share with you the Prayer for Weary Times by Reverend Margaret Weiss. Holy One, our hearts are weary, are tired, and are breaking. Our hearts are stretching as they are pulled and pushed, bruised and battered by all the suffering and brokenness and pain. Our ears are ringing with harsh words, with yelling, with gunfire that echoes in our streets and takes lives of innocents without cause. They're ringing with the affirmation that Black lives matter again and again until this idea is manifested in our legislation, our communities, and our hearts. We have heard stories of equality and justice, but our eyes burn from the instances of inequality, racism, and injustice that illustrate we are still far from where we hoped to be. Our mouths speak words of hope and of courage and of truth, and at times we find that words do no justice. The brokenness feels too big. Our bodies are collective bodies, built for lifting one another up and built for holding each other in love. They're being used against one another as weapons, and the ammunition is hatred and fear. Spirit of love and life. In this time of dissonance, and in this holy time of urgency to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves, help us to find our voice. Help us to see beyond this brokenness to a time of healing and true community. Help us to remember that the only journey toward healing is one that is paved through humility, acceptance of responsibility, and counteracting complacency. Ours is not a solitary journey, but one taken together, bolstered by deep listening and deeply rooted in love. May we find the strength needed for the journey here, in this place, and in all places where people gather for love, for humanity, and for justice. Blessed be.
There is always a light when we are ready to see it. There is always a light when we are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There is always your light in the dark. We are ready to see it. There is always your light in the dark. We are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and be a gift. Together we will. There is always your light. There is always we are ready to see it. There is always your light. There is always we are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and be a gift. Together we will. There is always light. There is always dark. There is always light. There is always dark. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and be a climb this hill. Together we will. There is always shine your light in the dark. There is always shine your light. There is always shine. Be the light.
Leah Morris's piece was inspired by Amanda Gorman's poem at the inauguration of President Biden.
Our readings this morning are quotes from Widening the Circle of Concern report. Our first quote is from Pam Spar from Transforming Unitarian Universalist Culture. Faith-rooted solidarity is not transactional. It might be described as universal relational because its adherents say, I know that my well-being is totally and irrevocably tied up with yours. My liberation is dependent on yours.
In Saving Paradise, Dr. Rita Nakashima Brock and Reverend Dr. Rebecca Ann Parker encourage us with these words. We can come to know the world as paradise when our hearts and souls are reborn through the arduous and tender task of living rightly with one another and the earth.
This quote is from the Innovations chapter of Widening the Circle of Concern. It is an anonymous quote from a focus group participant. What if we had a 1-800 number for spiritual support for people who are doing this work and are feeling weary and discouraged and confused?
Our final quote is from Reverend Dr. Adam Robersmith, who used to be the settled minister at Second Unitarian Church in Chicago. In cherishing our world, he reminds us that Our theology tells us to choose faith and hope and deep abiding love over fear, to act from the knowledge that we will save what is of great worth and sacredness to us. Let us refuse to be made immobile by fear and despair, instead choosing one more faithful action in every moment.
As we say in our covenant each Sunday, service is our law. UCE is called by our mission, values, and principles to contribute to our community, to form accountable partnerships, and to express gratitude through giving. Today's offering will be shared with Faith in Place, whose mission is to empower people of diverse faiths and spiritualities to be leaders in advancing environmental and racial justice, providing resources to educate, connect, and advocate for healthier communities. If you are joining us from home or in the building, you may text to give, mail in a check, or give from our website. If you write a check, please indicate in the memo line if your check is for the shared offering, pledge, capital campaign, or some other giving. If you are here in the building and have money, for the collection plate, please raise your hand. An usher will bring you the collection bowl. Please give as generously as you are able, and may what you give bring you joy.
Our children are invited at this time to go with Wendy Drake and Janice Milanovich to room 3. Parents can meet them there after the service. My name is Martha Holman, and I'm the second oldest of 8 children. In preparing for this morning's service, I thought about my pathway to social justice work, and if I have to pinpoint one specific starting point, it might be as a grade school kid watching my older sister Meg sneaking a large bag of our clothes out of the house to give away to the poor. I was stunned, so was my mother. I was also impressed. Meg continued in her life always to serve, to find the neediest people and do something to help. She even lived and worked at a Catholic Workers Center in inner city Los Angeles for several years with no pay and no traditional benefits. I was in awe of her dedication. Often when things got tough for her or for me, she would say to me, "Peace and love, peace and love." I tried to be a little bit like her, but it wasn't my natural inclination. And then she died in the late 90s, and I joined this church at about the same time. I had been a feminist since the 70s, and that held my attention and my volunteerism for some time. But seeing Meg's early act of charity so long in the past had planted a seed in me, and after her death, I found myself wanting to carry on, in some small way at least, her kind of work in the realm of wider social justice. I liked being a part of UCE because there were always small things I could do, like help with a project or an event, getting signatures on a petition, or sending a letter to my representatives. And then this congregation, through the voice of Gail Smith, invited me to help bring education and learning about racial justice to the forefront in this religious community. And REAL was born, Racial Equity, Action, and Leadership. It's been in existence under this name since 2015 when Gail, Joan Retzloff, Sarah Vanderwicken, and I started our work. With the help of a lot of others, we got the Black Lives Matter sign put up in our front yard, and we organized a series of equity workshops led by the YWCA. REAL continues today with a larger group of UCE folks to bring education and action ideas to us all. Being a part of this congregation is a source of inspiration, ideas, and companionship on my journey. I find myself inspired by each of you. You are my spiritual community, and we are a team. So many of you have jumped in to help, to learn, to stand on Ridge with us like this Thursday, to run in the Ricky Birdsong race, and so much more. It is from you all and with you that I am learning humility and relationship building as core principles of justice work. I try to support the other justice teams as well because they are all important. The work is hard, and like Steve, I make mistakes, and I try to find joy in the work. And there is still much for me to learn. We have big aspirations, and when I feel helpless, you remind me that we choose hope. We are part of a larger community that is working on anti-racism and anti-oppression together. I am humbled in the face of such dedication and support, and I'm grateful to be in this work with all of you. Peace and love.
My first year of college, the very first group I joined was the Ecological Concerns Organization. It was an election year, and I immediately received some enlightening lessons from my fellow classmates about the politics of environmental issues, which then led me to volunteer for the 1992 presidential election. That year, I became cognizant of how our civic life reflects the values of the people who vote. I hadn't known that before. The recycling center in my hometown had been operating since 1971. Students at my high school had a boycott campaign against the Coca-Cola company in protest of its profits made capitalizing on the apartheid system in South Africa. My hometown had a small college and a large university where speakers and public events on a wide range of topics were open for the public to attend. What I didn't realize before my conversations with other college students, some from small Midwest towns, and some from the Chicago suburbs, was that my values seemed to be naturally reflected in my surroundings because I lived in a fairly liberal college town, and people with values like mine were the people who voted. These values, caring for the environment and engaging in our democracy, have shaped my life path. And when a friend invited me to a Unitarian Universalist church many years after I had graduated from college, I finally found a faith community that shared my long-held values. And for this, I am continually grateful. We are in another election year. And while we are not voting for a president this time, this year, once again, the election results will affect our civic life on local, state, and national levels. I invite all of you to do two things between now and the elections in November. The first is to find a way to encourage others to vote. Our UU the Vote team has a 40,000 Points of Love initiative, which we picked because in the last election cycle, they had a 1,000 points of love, and this congregation made 22,000 points of connection. And so this year we have a 40,000 Points of Love initiative. And each point of love is a point of connection that can be made by sending a postcard or sending a text, or by going in person to have a conversation with a friend or someone at one of the public events, or by doing pamphlet drops that the Unitarian Universalist Advocacy Network of Illinois will be organizing. And the second is to make a commitment to vote yourself. In Illinois, you can register right now for a mail-in ballot for the primaries and the general election. I did it this week. And if you plan to vote in person, make sure to check your voter registration status sometime soon. I believe that if we follow our UU values, not just our passion for the environment, but our deep commitment to anti-racism and anti-oppression work, that we will continue to bend the arc of our civic life toward justice. Please rise in body or spirit for our final hymn, number 1028, Fire of Commitment. We will sing the first and third verses.
Sets our mind
As Michelle and Steve extinguish our chalice, please join in saying the words on the screen by the Reverend Elizabeth Sell Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we together again.
May you feel the love and care from this community that surrounds you. And may that love and care be reflected in your values as you move through the world in the days and months ahead. Blessed be. Go in peace.